morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Hello, I am Mattias Caro. I am an instructor here at the Well-Trained Mind Academy. I teach history, government, and a number of important electives. Additionally, I am the chair of the social studies, that is history and electives department. Firstly, thank you for giving me your time. If you are new here to the Well-Trained Mind Academy, if you're checking us out, welcome. I really hope you give me the opportunity to partner with you in the education of your child. If you've been with us for a long time, thank you. I hope that we can continue working with you. If at any point you have any questions for me about myself, my classes, what we do here in the Social Studies and Electives Department, please go ahead and email me, mcaro@wtmacademy.net. That's mcaro@wtmacademy.net. I'd be more than happy to connect with you and see how we can answer your questions. I have been here with the Well-Trained Mind Academy since its opening in 2014, but I've been a teacher and an educator for well over 20 years now, working with students in a variety of settings, from teaching at an elite boarding school in the foothills of the Alps to opening a school with my wife in the western part of Loudoun County, Virginia. Education is not just my career, but it's truly my vocation and my calling. I've lived all of my life in the great Commonwealth of Virginia, although my parents and extended family are originally from Santiago, Chile. I have an undergraduate degree in history from the College of William and Mary, and I also have a master's degree in moral theology from Christendom College in Virginia and a law degree from George Mason University. Why do I teach? I teach because I want students to be passionately interested in the subjects that I cover. For me, each course and each student is an opportunity to guide a student through an area, a body of knowledge, a skill set that is new to them, and help them develop the skills and interests in the subject area to ultimately continue their studies on their own. I know that with not every student that I work with, not most students that I work, that they're going to be passionate about history or government or health or philosophy as I am. But at the end of a course with me, I want each of my students ready to continue learning in that area in a manner that is positively impactful, not just on their own life, but also enriching for those around them. So, what should you expect if you sign up in a course here at the Well-Trained Mind Academy with me? So all my courses are divided into two parts, right? We have the learning module itself, where all of the asynchronous assignments will be, and then we have the meeting class. So let's talk about that learning module first, right? So you've signed up for one of my classes. What is the work expectation going to look like? So one of the things that I've learned through the years of working with students online is to be as organized, scheduled, and upfront with students as possible. So all of my classes have assignments 3 days of the week. And typically the pattern for assignments is reading on Mondays, some sort of discussion board on Wednesday, and a longer form assignment on Fridays. That way, students, as they build their schedule and they have other classes with us, co-ops, learning on their own, maybe they're enrolled in the local university or community college, They know how they can balance their schedule. Okay, Mr. Caro, he's very predictable. I know what it is he's going to ask of me, even if it's challenging week over week. So the reading assignment typically has some sort of self-directed learning. The student is going to read either from a textbook, from a primary source, and they're going to be asked to work with that to do their first stage of learning. So typically that might involve some type of reading quiz that is going to test their memory and recall and processing of information. Or it might be some sort of multi-part assignment. Give me key terms and notes from the reading you took. Answer some key questions about processing ideas that the author has presented to you. And then apply your insight into something practical in life, right? This is all going to kind of depend on the subject area, but it's all geared towards the student getting a first level of mastery in the material that we are looking at for that week. And then typically in the middle of the week, I throw in a discussion question. The discussion question can take a lot of forms, right? Sometimes it's presenting to the students a particular text and asking them to analyze and react. Could be presenting a video and asking the students to give me their opinions on that. Could be giving the students a role-playing scenario where they're going to be asked to take both sides of the particular task that I've given them. The goal of the discussion board is not only to get the students to interact with one another, right? And that's a great thing about online education. I could be living in Virginia and my classmate is in Oregon and we're talking together. But it's also giving them a chance to work on a wide variety of tasks, a bunch of different ways in order to process the information and show their mastery of skills. And then typically on a Friday, we have some sort of longer form assignment, maybe a short response. In my history classes, sometimes this is where we have outlines or short writing papers. It's just going to kind of depend on the subject area and what we are working on to master them. I do want students to stick to my schedule. I do understand when there are situations, family travel, some unexpected event that comes up. And I always tell students, hey, reach out to me ahead of time when you know you've got an issue. Let's figure out how I can help you to juggle that. But generally, sticking on the schedule is the first and best way to ensure success in my class. So that's one half, the coursework. The other half is the weekly class session itself. As I like to tell students, my class is going to be the best hour of your week. I fill my classes with a great deal of energy. I want them to be engaging. I've got a lot of humor in my classes, and I want them to be memorable, right? So when you've come to class week over week, we're not just trying to cover material. There's going to be 2 or 3 things that you are going to remember from that class each week. I know that there's a lot of competition for your students' attention. And I do believe that in online education, I've got to be up to the task for competing with the things that are trying to compete for your students' attention. Now, to be prepared for the class, obviously do the reading beforehand and other assignments that I may give. Make sure you have your texts in front of you and be free of distractions, okay? I can't win the game if there's another tablet in the room, a phone, or you've got browser windows open, right? Give me your full and complete attention. Class is about active listening. Active listening means that as I'm saying things, you're reacting in the chat box. Maybe you even raise your hand and you speak up to the class. There's opportunities to fill things in on the slides. Perhaps you do that. I typically break up each class into about 4 or 5 lessons that slide into one another that turn the student's engagement to a particular part of the subject material, right? So that way, each lesson's anywhere between 8 to 12 minutes. We are constantly sort of shifting focus to make sure that the student doesn't get bogged down in any one thing. Sometimes my classes turn into Socratic discussions where I am trying to pull information out of students. Sometimes my classes revolve around counterfactual examples. Hey, what if the opposite thing happened in history? Or what if instead of doing this in government, we did that? Sometimes classes are about students talking about their own particular experiences and how they would deal with a problem if it were presented to them, right? The whole point of this is taking them through different exercises that not only test their recall, but also get them to apply the information and develop the skills that I am looking for them to develop. Especially in my upper level classes, I do from time to time do group work where I will break the students up and have them in small groups, about 4 or 5, work on a distinct question that then they will come back as a class and present to the entire class, and then we'll run the conversation from there. Right? My whole goal is for those 50 to 55 minutes to keep students actively engaged, and really by the end of class, look at the clock and say, where did the time just go? So I will be doing 2 teaching samples. One will be from one of my elective classes, Life Skills, that deals with how to work with finances. Another one will be from one of my middle school classes, my logic stage history classes, so you can see how I work with students at that age. Again, if you have any questions, please do reach out to me, Mattias Caro. My email address is mcaro@wtmacademy.net. Thank you so much for your time and attention. And as I like to say to my students at the end of every class, we are here for a good time, but not a long time. And I look forward for the opportunity to be working with you and your student in the near future. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. So I will be presenting you about a 10-minute clip from my high school course, Adulting. This is a life skills course where we teach in 2 parts a number of different areas that we know high school students will want to focus on: budgeting, financial literacy, goal planning, personal improvement, job search, including resume building, cover letter writing, networking, college level study skills. How exactly are you to prepare for college level and independent work, and sort of a number of other topics. So this excerpt from today's class comes from an early part of the first semester version of this class, where we're going to dive into creating a model budget. So this is the opening screen I always show my students. I give them a slide deck for each course. If you notice at the bottom, I always indicate what week of the course we are in and what our particular focus is for this class. In this case, we are creating a model budget. At the start of the class, I always go over the grading review. What are the assignments that we have had due in this class? Typically, in most of my classes, I make assignments due Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So I try to keep everything within the work week. I don't generally assign very large things over the weekend so that students, are free to do what it is that they need to do without the burden of homework from my perspective. I do give students a syllabus at the beginning of the year, and I open up all assignments about 2 weeks ahead of time, sort of encouraging that students work clearly. I also always provide students a road ahead. Hey, here are the assignments that you see. Normally I have the due dates in here, which I did not put for this teaching sample video. Now, today's lesson as part of budgeting, we're going to start this by focusing on a young adult that is going to become a model for us in class. I'd like you to all welcome our friend Nora to this class, right? Nora is named after a friend of mine I had many, many years ago in my first year of teaching. And when I saw this particular photo, it just made me think of Nora. So Nora is a 23-year-old recent college graduate. So she just finished college. Typical college student is a very unsure of what her professional life might look like, unsure of where she can apply her skills, also carrying a significant amount of college debt, which is something we want to get into. Nora has moved to a new city somewhere in the Midwest of the United States, right? She wants to go to a place where there's a lot of young people. She in particular was looking for a city where she did not need to own a car, good public transportation, great places to walk. This is sort of very typical pattern that we've seen lately of students that try to do. She's got an entry-level job, which is great. It provides a steady salary to her, and we're going to get into what that looks like. And yes, mom and dad are going to be happy. This job does provide benefits such as medical insurance and dental care. Yes, we know that Nora here is not a great smiler, but she's got a set of teeth and she wants to make sure that they are cavity-free. So let's talk about Nora a little bit more, right? Nora has an annual salary of about $36,000 per year. This is somewhere in the ballpark of what entry-level work looks like, right? Entry-level work is you're in an office and you know how to file and answer phones and do low-level tasks, but you're not trained up to do more sophisticated jobs. Perhaps it's a customer facing position in a business, right? An intake coordinator. Customer comes in with a problem, you help coordinate that problem. This is a job that you can be trained up for relatively easily. What skills are they looking for in this job? Well, definitely that you are a person that will show up, be on time, not take random days off because you feel like it. Your reliability, you're also personable, you're eager to learn, right? You show some level of initiative. This is all what an entry-level job looks like. So I picked 36,000 because it's a relatively easy number to work with. This comes out to being paid about $20 per hour. Right? When you consider that the current minimum wage is somewhere between $12 to $17 in most states, $36,000 a year at $20 an hour, it's not that much more, right? So this is sometimes what the value of a college education gets you at the beginning. So this means that she has, and see the underlined word, a gross salary of $3,000 per month, right? Gross salary, right? There's two words here we need to remember. Gross versus net. Gross, in this case, means what do you get before we start taking away things like taxes and benefits and all that, right? The raw number, right? We're going to talk about how to go from a gross salary to a net salary, which is what gets deposited into your bank account. This means that her biweekly gross salary might be about $1,500. Now, in a job, typically, you are going to be paid on a schedule. You will either be paid monthly, in which case we divide your salary by 12, or you will be paid biweekly, every other week, in which case we divide it by 24, right? 24 biweekly periods in a year. Now you can see why I selected this number. It's relatively easy to calculate. Now, the amount you get paid per pay period might change. So for example, in this job, Nora has to log her hours. So if she works 40 hours a week, she's gonna get that full 3,000, right? If she works less than that, she's gonna have to use her time off to make up for the hours she didn't work, or she might even have the opportunity to work overtime. Yes, nobody wants to work more hours, but overtime is also called time and a half, which means employees get paid 1.5 times what they normally make for any hour they work over 40. By the way, some states have different standards. Your mileage may vary. Please check in with your local state employment office for further details. This means that Nora is considered a regular, non-exempt employee. Whoa. When you are on a salary, this term is really important. There are two types of salaried employees, exempt and non-exempt. This word, non-exempt, applies to the overtime rules I just talked about. When you are non-exempt, you can make overtime. When you are exempt, you cannot make overtime. Typically speaking, exempt employees need to have some sort of managerial responsibility. In other words, they're getting paid for their position, not the number of hours that they work for. This may sound great, but remember, if something goes wrong and you're an exempt employee, you've got to keep working until the problem is solved and you don't make extra money. So, typically, when you have a job, you are paid through something called payroll. We're going to talk about this a little bit later in the semester, but one thing I tell students all the time, when you apply for a job, please make sure that you have a bank account. Because when you have a bank account, your money can be deposited directly into your bank account. I have been sitting in fast food restaurants and other establishments listening to teenagers have a job interview, and it can be going great, and suddenly the interviewing manager asks, do you have a bank account where we could deposit your check? And they'll say, I don't. And I usually see faces of, well, you're going to have to solve that problem so we can get a job, right? So we'll talk about that a little bit later in the semester. She also gets to participate in her company's 401k matching program. A 401k is a type of retirement account. Nora's 23. Why does she have to do this? Oh, because normally there are benefits to this. Do not let her flare holding and boot-wearing ensemble fool you into that she should not be thinking about the benefits of saving for retirement. So let's look at that gross pay versus take-home pay. So you're going to see I've got an amount going here in the center column. This is where we are starting off. If it's positive, it means she gets it. If it's negative, it means we're taking it away. So everything here is in a particular order. So we have our monthly gross salary, our health insurance, our 401k, our federal income tax, state income tax, Social Security, and Medicare. Whoa. Okay. So I would like you to see as a student, right? You start with $3,000, right? You can see that both in the amount and running total. What hits your bank account is $2,146, right? Or some rough math, you've lost between 30 to 32% of your gross salary in your take-home pay. Whoa, where did all that money go? Well, for starters, Nora's got to pay 50-50 of her health insurance premium. Your premium is the monthly money you have to pay for your health insurance benefit. It costs $400 total. Company pays $200 of it. You've got to pay $200 of it. So off the top, we take $200. Nora decides to enroll in the matching 401k program. We take $90 out of her salary each month for that. But here's a great thing. In a matching 401k, your company also matches dollar for dollar up to a certain amount, whatever you contribute. It's free money. You want to take that money for two reasons. One, when you put money in, you get more money. That's a good thing. Two, the money for health insurance and 401k is taken out pre-tax. What does that mean? It means it reduces the amount of money that the federal, state, and sometimes cities are going to come after for you. So instead of taxing you at $3,000 income, they're going to tax you at $2,710 income. That's great, right? A little bit less for the tax man to cometh and taketh. So now we are looking at our 4 taxes, right? A federal income tax and a state income tax. These numbers are going to vary depending on A, how much money you make, and B, where you are. Different states have different levels of state income tax. So when you're thinking about where you're going to move, this is a consideration, right? Hey, I want to actually go to this state because it turns out they don't tax my salary, right? Now, they may take your money in other ways, right? You know, we rob Peter to pay Paul. Don't think you're going to completely get off scot-free, but it's something you might consider. Then you will always have other taxes put on you. On your paycheck, you're going to see something called FICA, Social Security. We're going to take money out of your account to help fund the retirement of the boomers and other people that are retired. Social Security, please remember, is not the same thing as a retirement account. You will start getting a statement from the Social Security Administration which projects what your payment will look like someday when you hit the magical age of retirement for Social Security. However, it is not like that money is sitting in an account for you. It is a promise by the government to pay you that money someday. And the government has to have the money in order to pay you. This is something your generation will get to consider very closely. But I digress. Take my government class for more information. You'll also be paying for Medicare. This is the insurance program for people in need. And it's also a tax taken out. Basically, Social Security and Medicare are they're often referred to as the payroll tax. They're a tax that you cannot really get around. So great. You've got about $2,100 after the tax man cometh. So what are we going to do with that? Well, we're going to make the number easy. We're just going to make it $2,100 instead of the change that we had on the other one. So we're going to ask how she's going to spend her money. Look, this is the beginning of a very basic budget. We are going to go into so much more depth, but I want you to see how quickly this money disappears. Okay? First off, Nora took this class, and so she is going to take 10% of that money and slide it into a savings account that is hopefully paying her interest. Remember, we live in a time where we have a moderate amount of inflation. And if you do not put your money into an account that bears interest, your money is losing its value. Remember, we have talked that money is ultimately a tool. And if your money is not earning interest, like a hammer getting weak or a knife getting dull, your money is losing the ability to have it do things for you. So let's look at the big expenses, right? $1,890 after she slid $210 of it into savings. She's paying about $800 a month in rent. Several of you are shaking your head saying, whoa, I would like to live somewhere where I only pay $800 a month. She's Nora, she's young. She's probably sharing a flat, an apartment, a townhome with 2 or 3, 4 other roommates, right? When you're young, you're probably going to be living with other young people to defer your costs. That's just really typical. Nora's got to have a telephone, right? So she's got a telephone here, and she is spending her money on a cell phone plan. So she's gonna be spending about $100 on a cell phone. Okay, maybe she listened to Ryan Reynolds and she's got a Mint mobile phone and she's paying a little bit less. But it's about there, especially because your phone oftentimes is gonna be your principal way of accessing the internet. And we are going to need internet access to do whatever you are. I told you that Nora chose a city where public transportation is plentiful. She doesn't have a car, but she still needs to get around. Ubers, bike shares, buses, subways, bumming a ride with friends, car share. She's going to be spending about $200 a month going around. That's great. We got $790 left. Everything's going great. You haven't eaten yet, Nora. Nora's going to spend about $300 on food. Now, I always get students pushing me back on this. $300, I'm going to get by on bologna and peanut butter and jelly. No, you're not. Okay? I know that you think you're going to continue your college life of living on ramen for most of your meals. Yeah, you know what? You're getting older. Okay? Suddenly, your mid-20s self does not react as well to such a poor diet as your 18-year-old self could pull off. You're going to be spending some money on food. And, if you want to go out with friends even once or twice a month, that food budget is going to get eaten up really, really quickly. So the $300 number is fairly conservative, right? So that leaves $490 in the bank. Dum da dum dum. Dum da dum dum dum. You have to make a student loan payment. Yes, you went to a wonderful 4-year university. You had some fantastic experiences. You learned a few things, but you also had to borrow money. In this case, Nora has borrowed what I think I consider to be a fairly modest amount of money, about $50,000 for a student loan. She's chosen to repay it over a 15-year period. Now, let me just be clear. One of the exercises I'm going to do with students down the road is playing with a student loan calculator and showing them how changes in student loan repayment schedules, principal amounts, et cetera, will all vary their payment, right? But this is sort of a model number, $50,000, 15 years at 6% interest. That's $420 per month, which means I now only have $70 left over, which means I only have $280 in my bank account at the end of the month. There's a lot of things I haven't calculated for here yet. Entertainment, going to the movies, going to see something, travel, getting out on the weekend with friends, emergency expenses. My computer broke. I had to go visit the doctor, pay my deductible. Nora can't shop at the thrift store forever, right? She's got to look professional, clothing. That's really not a lot of money. And what I want students to see, and the thing that normally jumps out at them, is how debilitating student loan debt can be on your ability to support yourself right as you get out of college, right? Something that's sort of really hard to properly understand as an 18-year-old. This is something we're going to dive in more into this class, something that I really hope I get the privilege and opportunity to work on with your student. So next week, and I always close my class like this, we will be talking about living the life as an adult, right? We're going to continue looking at Nora, looking at budgeting, looking at the practical implications of this budget day to day, and what exactly it means to be making these decisions on your own. We are here for a good time, not a long time. Hopefully, I will see your student at the scheduled bat time on the same bat channel. Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Welcome to week 8 of Story of the Modern Age. Today we get to dive into the Cold War. So welcome those of you seeing this teaching sample. The introduction for my classes always starts with this amount of energy, this orientation, and I usually start with this screen where we say the topic of the class, the class itself, and always at the bottom of the slides, you'll see what week we're in. I always provide the slides to the students. So if there's anything on the slide that they want to copy down or something like that, they have it available to them. They also have the recording always available to them, whether or not they are in the live or recording section. So if they're a little worried about staying on top of the class, not a problem. They will be able to get the information that they need. When I open up a class, I always go over the status of the assignments they have just turned in. I do this for a couple of reasons. One, it helps keep me honest as a teacher. I'm accountable to my students, and that way I have to show up and tell them, hey, you have to make sure, I have to make sure I've turned things into them. Also, if for whatever reason they've forgotten about something, it's a gentle reminder, hey, we need to get this in, okay? I always look at the assignments ahead for class. My classes have a very typical rhythm to them. I assign work on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Monday is always reading work, right? So the text we're reading plus the review that we're doing with that text. Wednesday is a class discussion board, which typically is springboarding off of the topic for the week. It's through the discussion board that I actually have a variety of different assignments from, your typical, hey, let's discuss a particular topic, an event that happened. Sometimes the assignment is creative. I ask them to role play. You're this person advising this leader. What would you say? Sometimes it's even artistic and creative. During the times of the semester that I know students have heavier workloads, I will be honest with them. I ask them to do like a picture or a comic or something else creative about a particular historical assignment, and it breaks up the monotony that can be schoolwork. And then on Fridays, we always have some sort of written assignment. It could be an outline, a written summary, a primary source reading, an update to their timeline. Friday is always when we have that big piece assignment. The nice way of how I structure my class is it keeps all of our work within the school week, Monday to Friday. So I don't assign any sneaky large projects that are going to consume their weekends. I really want to respect my students' time and also family time out there. As you can see, this class is situated right before spring break, which we have 8 weeks into the semester. I don't assign anything over spring break. So the subject of today's particular class is the Cold War, and it's divided into multiple parts. And what you will see here is how I will supplement the discussion on the Cold War. In particular, right now we are looking at the space race. So I'll ask the students, hey, what are we looking at right here? What is this picture you see, right? And students put up their hands and talk in the discussion, and they will say, there's students hiding under their desk. Okay, why are these students hiding under their desk? Some students who are, especially from the Midwest, be like, I don't know, maybe it's a tornado drill, right? I say, okay, that's a good thought. And then I point out, what you're seeing here is a very typical exercise that was done in the 50s and 60s in American schools. What you're seeing here is a photograph of a drill that students practiced at school in preparation for a nuclear strike by the Soviets. Okay, students sort of immediately point out some funny things about this picture. First off, one of the girls in the front is clearly smiling. Like, oh boy, we're about to suffer a nuclear holocaust here. I'm smiling. This is great, right? Well, she knew she was taking a picture. Other students actually were very sharp, point out that this picture actually shows an integrated classroom, which is very fascinating, right? That they might point this out, right? Because the 1950s was the time of desegregation and school integration, right? So yeah, these are some details here about these classrooms. Some students say, hey, I've been in a building with desks like this before, which is always fun, right? I like to hear them say all of this. What's clear though, right, is that the students are being trained for something totally horrific, right? Now, I will ask the students, why do this drill? Well, some students say to protect them. Okay. Does anybody know how a nuclear weapon works, right? And in this case, I'll ask them to think back to our discussion of the dropping of the atomic bomb in Japan, in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. One where I do show pictures of the destruction that the bomb occurred and explain to them how it is that a nuclear weapon causes its destruction, right? Don't worry, I don't show any pictures of, actual the effects on an actual human being, but I do describe it, right? I describe the shockwave. I describe the blast of superheated air. I describe the fire that typically is what destroys in the first part of a nuclear weapon, right? Because we think nuclear and instantly our ideas go towards radiation. Well, that's not what kills you when a bomb drops. And I said, so the kids, what are they doing here? I mean, is a desk really going to save them from a nuclear blast? Like Indiana Jones getting inside of a refrigerator? Who, Mr. Caro? Don't watch that Indiana Jones movie. It's not worth it. He tries to survive a nuclear blast by going inside of a lead-lined refrigerator. I know one of your parents understands this reference. It's to give the kids something to do, okay? This is how horrific the idea is of annihilation by nuclear weapon. You know that if your city or area is targeted for a strike, you can't outrun it. And the chances of surviving it are very low. So what do? You try to keep calm and carry on, right? This drill was precisely to give the students something to do, something to focus on while the blast was occurring, right? It's kind of similar to when an airplane is going down and they're like, please assume brace position. Well, it's going down pretty fast. How you're seated and the seatbelt may or may not help you survive it, but at least we've got you doing something so you're not panicking, okay? This is the world we were in, right? Like an airplane ready to crash. I mean, the horrificness of the Cold War at its peak, right? I mean, you can't imagine this, going to school and being like, well, is this the day we're going to get blasted, right? We're talking about this in the context of the space race. Understand, the space race was about the United States and the Soviet Union showing their superiority in rocket technology. Why? The rocket was the next advancement in the deploying of nuclear weapons. It meant that instead of needing to launch an airplane with a heavy payload, which could be detected for hours in its approach, and in theory, with a good radar system, shot down, right? So both the Soviets and the Americans know that the possibility of the Enola Gay, the plane that that dropped the first bomb in Japan, they knew that possibility wasn't really feasible anymore, right? Immortalized in the movie Dr. Strangelove, which when you're older, you will want to see the movie Dr. Strangelove because it is very bizarre and it shows sort of the weird contradictions that are all within this Cold War space race. But the space race, right? We think about it in terms of these great ideals, right? We reach for the stars, right? There's something magical and wonderful about space, right? Embodied in positively in so many different science fiction literature and films, right? But the origins of the space base were primarily military, right? And so the Soviets got the jump on the United States here, right? Here you are seeing a poster, right? CCCP, right? The Russian words for the Soviet Union, right? And this picture right here is showing the first satellite to go into space. Man, we have so many satellites in space now, right? Some in the upper atmosphere, some in the lower atmosphere. There's a lot out there. October 4th, 1957, the first time human beings launched a man-made satellite into space. And it was this object, Sputnik, right? That the Soviets launched into space, right? Clearly, you see the words Sputnik written there. If you are looking for an end-of-year project that you will do for this class, doing a model of Sputnik is not too bad, right? You can see Sputnik here, really no larger than a basketball in its size. It actually feels kind of flimsy, and you can see here that it's got 4 antennae coming out of it. There you go, antenna, antennae, first declension Latin word. Always got to know your Latin. 4 antennae coming out of it, right? And so this really scared the Western world, and in particular the United States. Oh my goodness. And the military generals were probably not being as polite to say the words, oh my goodness. What can the Soviets do? You think Sputnik is good? Wait till you meet Laika. Followed closely on the launching of Sputnik, the Soviets launched the first animal into space, the stray dog known as Laika. You can see here immortalized in a Romanian postage stamp, right? You can see the little jagged edges of where the stamp was torn off. Laika was a stray dog that was found on the streets of Moscow. Kind of a nice fellow. And he was launched into space. He circled the Earth, I believe it was 36 times. And then, he turned into a hot dog. See, the Soviets knew how to launch the dog into space, but they didn't have a plan for how to bring him back. They had not yet developed or worked out the heat shield technology that our space shuttle and other space capsules have, right? If any of you have ever gone to the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C., there's an annex outside the Smithsonian where you can go see, I believe it's, I'm going to get it wrong. I think it's the Columbia that is at the annex. And it is, or is it the Enterprise? I can't remember now. But anyways, it doesn't matter. And you can see the space shuttle. And when you see the space shuttle close up, you notice that it looks like a mosaic, right? Mosaic or ancient Greek art of tiles. Well, it literally has tiles on the outside of it. These are the heat shield tiles that dissipate the heat produced by the friction of the shuttle re-entering into Earth's atmosphere. So unfortunately, the Soviets sent poor Laika up in a tin can, and when it came down, there was no more Laika. They actually did this to a number of dogs. They were all strays. Interestingly enough, this image of the space dog enters into children's literature in the United States. This was about the time when Laika was sent into the sky that the Curious George books came out. And it's the second or third Curious George book where Curious George does his usual shenanigans. And he is saved from his shenanigans by a letter from a scientist that asks him to go into space as the first space creature. And Curious George becomes a space monkey, and he gets shot up into the atmosphere, and there's even a picture of Curious George experiencing zero gravity, in which there's tension building up, and he pulls a lever, and he shoots out of the capsule and comes down in a parachute. Science suspended temporarily for the sake of not killing one of the beloved characters of American literature, Curious George. But the Cold War, right? It was impacting even children's imaginations, right? We shot him into space. The Soviet Union wanted to inflict maximum fear on the rest of the world, right? In particular, the Soviet premier, as pictured here, Nikita Khrushchev. He is pictured here at the United Nations, right? Nikita Khrushchev has a really tall order, right? He is the first Soviet leader after one Joseph Stalin, right? A man whose name should be infamous. We've gone over him before, talking about the Russian Revolution and during World War II. You know, a man who has a lot of blood on his ledger, right? Who ruled by fear, right? And so Stalin, you know, he's a Soviet political man. The world doesn't know who he is, right? Stalin wants to project the maximum amount of terror and strength to the world. We have been launching satellites into space. We're launching dogs into space. You don't know what the Soviet Union is capable of. And in a moment that almost defies believability, Khrushchev comes before the United Nations, giving a speech, fiery, full of passion, right? You can see the use of pathos to project strength and bring fear into his enemies or to the rest of the world, right? Similar to a lot of the videos we've seen from World War II, right? This is the great part about studying history during this time. We can actually see what people look like and what they sounded like. And in something that nobody would believe, in the middle of his speech, Khrushchev reaches down and takes off his shoe. He wasn't uncomfortable. He took his shoe and he began banging it on the podium at the United Nations. Why? So here I have students talk all about the reasons why Khrushchev banged his shoe on the podium, right? And usually I get a student say, because he was crazy. I said, let's follow that, right? This is a man who's helped organize his country to send a rocket into space, send a satellite, send a dog. Soon they're going to send really humans. Does this sound like a crazy man to you? No. And then someone will say, maybe he wants everyone to think he's crazy. Yes. Why? Why is that powerful? And then some student will usually say, because you don't know what he's going to do next. Exactly. The unknown, right? Here's what we have in the Cold War, the fear of the unknown, right? We started these sets of images with the potential for a nuclear holocaust. And we see children hiding under desks, right? We are looking for certainty, right? The West, the United States versus the Soviet Union. Yes, one and the other one wants to win. Yes, one and the other one sees their way of life as the way the world needs to follow in order for human beings to flourish. But by goodness, both sides are looking at the potential of the unknown, the potential of annihilation. And so it's in this, right? It's in this that we're talking about the space race and why the space race captures our imagination. Now, normally there's a lot more back and forth with me and the students here, right? A lot of what I was saying, normally I'm going to draw out of the students by looking at these pictures, right? The remainder of this lecture covers the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? We are peeking at that fear. We go through that also with some incredible pictures, including one of Fidel Castro looking at the Lincoln Memorial, right? This is right before he conducts his revolution in Cuba. And then we close with the actual moon landing, right? Because it's so dramatic, right? How did the United States catch up so quickly in the space race? And what does this mean? Having this singular moment that human beings experience, right? Watching Neil Armstrong, the first human beings set their feet on the moon. Not something I was alive for, but something that, I want to go back there and experience with students as to the capturing of the imagination. So that would have been this class. So we are here for a good time, not a long time. For next week's class, we are going to look at the continuing of struggles and the use of assassination as a tool to influence history and the politics of the day. We're going to go through some of the very notorious assassinations of the 1960s. This is normally I'd wish the students to have a wonderful, wonderful spring break and remind them that they can contact me with whatever needs they have. Thank you very much. And again, if you have any questions, have any follow-up, please go ahead and email me here at the Academy.